Marcus Thompson was a man with big dreams. Born into a simple family, he grew up watching his parents work tirelessly to make ends meet. From an early age, Marcus knew he wanted more for himself. He didn't want to live paycheck to paycheck. He wanted to build something grand, something that would last. So when he got the chance to attend college, he grabbed it with both hands. It wasn't easy, juggling studies and part-time jobs. But Marcus was determined. It was during his second year at university that he met Maya. She was unlike anyone he'd ever known, confident, smart, and full of life. Maya had this way of lighting up a room just by walking into it. They first crossed paths in the library, where Marcus was struggling to understand a complicated economics assignment. Maya noticed his frustration and offered to help. What started as a casual study session soon turned into long conversations about their hopes, fears, and ambitions. Before either of them realized it, they were inseparable. Their relationship wasn't perfect, but it was real. Both came from humble beginnings, and they shared a deep understanding of what it meant to fight for a better future. After graduation, they decided to take a leap of faith together. With little money but endless determination, they started a small real estate business. At first, things were tough. There were days when they barely had enough to cover rent, let alone dream of success. But Maya and Marcus leaned on each other, working late nights and brainstorming ideas over cups of instant coffee. Slowly but surely, their hard work paid off. The business began to grow, and so did their love. Maya was more than just Marcus's partner. She was his rock. She handled the numbers while he focused on deals, and together they made a brilliant team. Friends often joked that they were unstoppable. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form. As the business flourished, Marcus changed. The same drive that once fueled his ambition now seemed to consume him. He became obsessed with appearances, always comparing himself to others. To him, success wasn't just about financial security anymore. It was about status, power, and being seen as important. Maya noticed the shift. She tried talking to Marcus, reminding him of why they started their journey together. But Marcus brushed her off, dismissing her concerns as unnecessary. In his mind, Maya was holding him back. She didn't dress like the women he saw at networking events or talk about the latest trends in luxury lifestyles. Instead, she stayed grounded, focusing on what truly mattered: their values, their bond, and their shared goals. Marcus, however, couldn't see past his own growing dissatisfaction. He convinced himself that Maya no longer understood him, that she didn't fit into the image of success he desperately craved. Little did he know, his misplaced desires would set off a chain of events that would change everything, for worse. Marcus's life took a turn one evening at a high-profile networking event. These events had become a regular part of his routine as his business grew. He attended them not just to make connections, but also to feel like he belonged among the elite crowd. That night, however, something, or rather someone, caught his attention in a way nothing else had before. Her name was Elena, and she seemed to float through the room like a magnet for admiration. She was young, with a dazzling smile and an air of confidence that drew people in. Unlike Maya, who carried herself with quiet strength, Elena thrived on being the center of attention. Her laughter rang out across the room, and her charm was impossible to ignore. When their eyes met, Marcus felt a jolt, a mix of curiosity and excitement he hadn't felt in years. Elena approached him first, complimenting his suit and asking about his work. Flattered by her interest, Marcus found himself talking more animatedly than usual. She listened intently, nodding at all the right moments and peppering their conversation with questions that made him feel important. By the end of the night, they had exchanged numbers, and Marcus left the event feeling lighter, almost giddy, in a way he couldn't explain. Over the next few weeks, Marcus and Elena began meeting regularly. At first, it was casual, coffee here, dinner there, but soon, their meetings became longer and more frequent. Elena had a way of making Marcus feel desirable again. She told him how impressive he was, how lucky Maya must be to have such a successful husband. Her words fed his ego, filling the void he didn't even realize existed. Around Elena, Marcus wasn't just a businessman, He was extraordinary, but guilt lingered in the back of his mind. Maya started noticing the late nights and missed calls. She asked if everything was okay, her voice tinged with concern. Marcus brushed her off, saying work was keeping him busy. Deep down, though, he knew he was lying. Not just to Maya, but to himself. Every time he was with Elena, he told himself, it was harmless, that they were just friends. But the truth was harder to ignore. He craved the excitement Elena brought into his life. As their affair deepened, Marcus began comparing Maya and Elena in ways that weren't fair. Maya's calm demeanor, once a source of comfort, now felt dull compared to Elena's vivacity. He convinced himself that Elena understood him better, that she appreciated the man he'd become. What he failed to see was that Elena's affection came with strings attached, strings tied to his money, his status, and the image he projected. One day, while scrolling through his phone, Maya stumbled upon a message from Elena. It was innocent enough, a simple, "Can't wait to see you tonight." But it was enough to confirm her suspicions. Confronting Marcus, she demanded answers. Instead of coming clean, Marcus grew defensive, accusing Maya of being paranoid and unsupportive. The argument left them both shaken, but instead of addressing the root of the problem, Marcus doubled down on his secret life. The more time he spent with Elena, the further he drifted from Maya. His marriage, once a partnership built on trust and love, began to crumble under the weight of his choices. Yet Marcus refused to acknowledge the damage he was causing. To him, Elena represented freedom, a chance to escape the responsibilities and expectations of his old life. What he didn't realize was that every step he took toward her was a step away from everything that truly mattered. And soon the consequences of his actions would catch up with him in ways he could never have imagined. The night Marcus decided to end his marriage was cold and quiet, but the storm brewing inside him was anything but calm. He had spent weeks convincing himself that this was the right decision, that leaving Maya for Elena would bring him happiness. But as he sat at the dining table across from Maya, the weight of what he was about to do pressed heavily on his chest. For a moment, doubt flickered in his mind, but he quickly pushed it aside. This was his chance to start fresh, to live the life he believed he deserved. Maya could sense something was wrong the moment Marcus walked into the room. His usual confident demeanor was replaced by an unsettling stiffness. She looked at him, her dark eyes searching his face for answers. "What's going on, Marcus?" she asked softly, already dreading the response. Marcus hesitated, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Then, with a voice devoid of emotion, he said the words that shattered everything they had built together. "I want a divorce." The room fell silent, except for the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Maya stared at him, her expression frozen in disbelief. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. "Why? What did I do wrong?" Marcus avoided her gaze, unable to look her in the eye. "It's not you," he muttered. "We've grown apart. You don't understand me anymore." It was a lie, and deep down he knew it. But admitting the truth, that he was leaving her for someone else, felt too cruel even for him. Maya wasn't fooled. Tears welled up in her eyes as pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. All the late nights, the missed anniversaries, the distant behavior, it all made sense now. "Is there someone else?" she asked, her voice breaking. Marcus didn't answer, but his silence spoke volumes. For days after their conversation, Marcus worked behind the scenes to secure his future, or so he thought. Using loopholes in their shared finances, he transferred large sums of money out of their joint accounts and into private ones under his name alone. He justified his actions by telling himself that he had earned it, that the business was his, creation too. But no amount of reasoning could erase the fact that he was betraying the woman who had stood by him, through thick and thin. When Maya discovered what he had done, the betrayal cut deeper than the divorce itself. Not only had Marcus taken her husband, but he had also stripped her of the financial stability they had built together. With little more than the house they once shared, Maya found herself starting over, unsure of how to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. Word of Marcus's actions spread quickly. Friends and colleagues who once admired him now viewed him with disdain. Many rallied around Maya, offering support and encouragement during her darkest days. To them, Marcus wasn't just a man ending his marriage. He was a symbol of greed and selfishness. His reputation crumbled almost overnight, leaving him isolated and increasingly paranoid. Meanwhile, Elena moved seamlessly into his world, stepping into the luxurious lifestyle Marcus promised her. At first, she seemed thrilled, relishing the attention and the expensive gifts he showered upon her. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form. Marcus's guilt gnawed at him constantly, making it hard for him to enjoy the fruits of his betrayal. And though Elena appeared happy, her true intentions remained hidden, for now. As Marcus settled into his new reality, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had made a grave mistake. But it was too late to turn back. At first, life with Elena seemed like everything Marcus had dreamed of. She was vibrant, exciting, and full of energy. Everything Maya wasn't, or so he thought. For a brief moment, Marcus allowed himself to believe that he had finally found happiness. But the illusion didn't last long. Beneath the surface of glitz and glamour, cracks began to show, revealing the truth about the life he had chosen. Elena's carefree attitude quickly turned into something else entirely. An insatiable need for attention and material things. She expected luxury at every turn, designer clothes, extravagant vacations, fine dining, and she made no effort to hide her disappointment when Marcus couldn't deliver. At first, he tried to keep up, dipping into the funds he had secretly taken from his shared accounts with Maya. But those reserves dwindled faster than he anticipated, and soon Marcus found himself struggling to maintain the lifestyle Elena demanded. One evening after a particularly expensive dinner, Marcus gently suggested they tone things down for a while. "We should be more careful with our spending," he said, trying to sound casual. Elena's reaction was anything but calm. Her eyes narrowed, and her voice grew sharp. "What do you mean, our spending? This is your responsibility, Marcus. You promised me a certain kind of life." Her words stung, not just because of their harshness, but because they forced him to confront a painful reality. Elena didn't love him for who he was. She loved what he could provide. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. He had left Maya, the woman who truly understood and supported him, for someone who saw him as nothing more than a meal ticket. Things got worse when word of Marcus's financial troubles spread. Clients who once admired his work started distancing themselves, unwilling to associate with someone whose reputation had been tarnished by scandal. Friends stopped calling, and even acquaintances avoided him, whispering behind his back about how far he had fallen. The loneliness gnawed at him, leaving him feeling more isolated than ever. To make matters worse, Elena's patience wore thin. She began criticizing him openly, mocking his inability to sustain the lavish lifestyle she craved. "You're not the man I thought you were," she sneered one night after another argument over money. Marcus wanted to defend himself, to explain how hard he was trying, but the words caught in his throat. He knew she was right. He wasn't the man she thought he was. In fact, he wasn't sure who he was anymore. As tensions mounted, Marcus found himself questioning everything. Was this really the life he wanted? The excitement he had felt with Elena had faded, replaced by stress and regret. He missed the simplicity of his old life, the quiet evenings at home with Maya, the shared laughter over small victories. Those memories haunted him now, reminding him of what he had thrown away. One day, Elena came home carrying several shopping bags filled with items Marcus hadn't approved or paid for. When he confronted her, she shrugged it off, saying, "I used your credit card. Don't worry, you can afford it." The audacity of her actions left him speechless. For the first time, Marcus realized just how reckless and selfish Elena truly was. He had traded a loving, loyal partner for someone who cared only about herself. The breaking point came during a heated argument. Elena accused him of lying about his financial situation, claiming he had misled her from the start. "You're not the successful man you pretended to be," she spat. "I deserve better. Before Marcus could respond, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. For hours, Marcus sat alone in his penthouse apartment, staring at the empty space where Elena had been. The silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos she had brought into his life. As the weight of his choices settled over him, Marcus realized something painful. He had gambled everything on a fantasy, and now he had lost it all. But the worst part wasn't the loneliness or the financial strain. It was the knowledge that he had destroyed something precious and irreplaceable, and there was no going back. While Marcus was drowning in guilt and regret, Maya was rebuilding her life one step at a time. At first, the pain of betrayal felt unbearable. She had given Marcus years of her love, trust, and partnership, only to be cast aside for someone else. But as the days turned into weeks, Maya found strength she didn't know she possessed. With the support of friends and family, she began to see that her worth wasn't tied to Marcus or the life they once shared. Maya decided to go back to school, something she had put on hold when their business took off. She enrolled in a finance program determined to take control of her future. It wasn't easy. Balancing coursework with managing the house and finding temporary work was exhausting. But every late night spent studying, every challenging assignment completed, reminded her of her resilience. Slowly but surely, Maya transformed her pain into purpose. Each small victory became a stepping stone toward reclaiming her independence. Her journey inspired admiration from those around her. Friends who had initially worried about how she would cope now marveled at her determination. Even some of Marcus's former colleagues reached out, impressed by her ability to rise above the situation. They offered opportunities, partnerships, consulting roles, and collaborations that helped her rebuild not just financially but also professionally. Maya accepted these offers graciously, knowing that success wasn't about revenge. It was about proving to herself that she could thrive without Marcus. What surprised everyone, even Maya herself, was how much she flourished once she stepped out of Marcus's shadow. Without his constant need for control or his obsession with appearances, Maya discovered a version of herself she hadn't seen in years. Bold, confident, and unapologetically authentic. She started mentoring other women going through similar struggles, sharing her story to let them know they weren't alone. Her message was simple, yet powerful. You are stronger than you think, and your value doesn't depend on anyone else. As Maya grew, so did her reputation. People began to see her not as the woman Marcus left behind, but as someone who had overcome adversity with grace and grit. Local newspapers featured her in articles about female entrepreneurs making waves in the industry. Community organizations invited her to speak at events, eager to hear her insights on resilience and reinvention. Every achievement added another layer to her identity, an identity that no longer included Marcus. Back in his penthouse apartment, Marcus couldn't help but notice the changes in Maya's life. News of her success reached him through mutual acquaintances and social media posts. He saw photos of her accepting awards, leading workshops, and smiling brightly alongside new friends and mentors. Each update was like a punch to the gut, reminding him of what he had lost and what he had underestimated. At first, Marcus tried to dismiss it, convincing himself that Maya's accomplishments were fleeting, but deep down, he knew better. The woman he had written off as too grounded or not ambitious enough had proven him wrong in every possible way. Her transformation was undeniable, and it forced him to confront the truth. He had thrown away a treasure he would never find again. Maya's resilience wasn't just inspiring, it was humbling. For the first time, Marcus began to understand the depth of his mistake. He had chased an illusion of happiness with Elena, only to lose the real thing he already had with Maya. And while he couldn't undo the past, watching Maya succeed made him realize just how much he had squandered. Though Maya's journey was far from over, one thing was clear. She was no longer defined by Marcus or the pain he caused. Instead, she stood as a testament to the power of perseverance, proving that even in the face of heartbreak, it's possible to build a brighter, better future. Elena's patience finally ran out one rainy afternoon, and the confrontation that followed left Marcus reeling. It wasn't just an argument, it was the culmination of weeks of growing tension, unmet expectations, and Marcus's dwindling ability to keep up with her demands. The penthouse apartment, once a symbol of his newfound freedom, now felt like a gilded cage where he was trapped with someone who no longer pretended to care about him. It started over something small, a credit card bill that had been declined at an upscale boutique. Elena stormed into the apartment, her arms full of shopping bags she hadn't paid for. "What is this?" she demanded, waving the rejected receipt in his face. Marcus tried to explain that his financial situation was tighter than she realized, but Elena cut him off before he could finish. "You lied to me," she shouted, her voice echoing through the empty rooms. "You made me believe you were rich, powerful, someone I could actually depend on. But look at you. You're nothing but a fraud." Her words hit him like a slap, each one sharper than the last. She paced back and forth, her heels clicking against the marble floor, as she listed all the ways Marcus had failed her. "I gave up my life for you," she spat. "And this is what I get? A broke man living off scraps?" Marcus wanted to defend himself, to tell her that he had worked hard for everything he had. But the words died in his throat. He knew she wouldn't listen. Worse, he couldn't deny the truth in what she was saying. He had lied, not just to her, but to himself. He had convinced himself that leaving Maya would bring him happiness, but instead, it had only brought emptiness and regret. Now, staring at Elena's furious expression, he saw clearly what he should have noticed long ago. She didn't love him. She never had. The fight escalated quickly. Elena accused him of being selfish, immature, and incapable of providing the lifestyle she deserved. Marcus, desperate to salvage whatever was left of their relationship, begged her to stay. "We can figure this out together," he pleaded. But Elena laughed bitterly. "Together? Don't make me laugh. You've been faking it since day one. I'm done." With that, she turned on her heel and began packing her things. Marcus watched helplessly as she stuffed clothes, jewelry, and other expensive items into suitcases. When she finished, she grabbed her purse and headed for the door, without so much as a backward glance. Before stepping out, she paused and said coldly, "Good luck fixing your mess, Marcus. You're going to need it." The sound of the door slamming shut echoed in the silence that followed. For a long moment, Marcus stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Then slowly, reality sank in. Elena was gone, and she wasn't coming back. The woman he had risked everything for had walked out of his life as easily as she had walked into it. Humiliated and desperate, Marcus tried reaching out to her in the days that followed. He sent texts, left voicemails, even showed up at places he thought she might be. But Elena ignored him completely. Eventually, he discovered why. She had moved on, to one of his former colleagues. The news hit him like a punch to the gut. Not only had she left him, but she had replaced him with someone who still had the wealth and status Marcus had squandered. The rejection shattered whatever fragile hope Marcus had left. He had gambled everything on Elena, believing she would complete the picture of success he craved. Instead, she had exposed the cracks in his foundation, leaving him more broken than ever. Alone in the penthouse, surrounded by reminders of the life he thought he wanted, Marcus realized the bitter truth. He had lost not just Elena, but also the respect of those around him, and, most painfully, the love of the one person who truly mattered. As days turned into weeks, Marcus found himself sinking deeper into despair. The glamorous world he had chased now felt hollow, meaningless. Every mirror reflected a man he barely recognized, a shadow of who he used to be. And though he tried to distract himself with work or alcohol, there was no escaping the ache of loneliness or the weight of his mistakes. He had burned bridges he couldn't rebuild, and the cost of his choices was heavier than he could bear. Months passed, and Marcus's life continued to spiral downward. The penthouse that once symbolized his escape from the past now felt like a prison of regret. He spent most of his days alone, staring out at the city skyline, replaying his mistakes in his mind. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional sound of distant traffic or the echo of his own thoughts. For the first time in years, Marcus allowed himself to confront the full weight of what he had done, not just to Maya, but to himself. One evening, after another sleepless night, Marcus decided to do something he had avoided for months. Reach out to Maya. He didn't know what made him pick up the phone that day. Maybe it was the loneliness gnawing at him, or maybe it was the recurring memory of her quiet strength, the same strength he had underestimated and ultimately betrayed. Whatever the reason, he dialed her number with trembling hands, half expecting her to hang up as soon as she heard his voice. To his surprise, Maya answered. Her tone was calm but guarded when she said, "Hello?" Marcus hesitated, suddenly unsure of what to say. Finally, he managed to choke out, "Maya, it's me, Marcus." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, he thought she might disconnect the call. But then she spoke, her voice steady. "What do you want, Marcus?" Her question caught him off guard. He hadn't prepared a speech or rehearsed what he wanted to say. All he knew was that he needed to apologize, to acknowledge the pain he had caused. Taking a deep breath, he began haltingly, I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I know I hurt you, and I know saying sorry doesn't change anything, but I need you to know how wrong I was." Maya listened silently, letting him speak without interruption. When he finished, there was another long pause before she responded. Her words were measured, deliberate. "Marcus, I appreciate you calling, and I believe you mean what you're saying, but your apology doesn't fix what happened. It doesn't undo the damage." He nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "I know," he admitted. "I don't expect forgiveness. I needed to tell you. You deserved better than how I treated you." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Maya said softly, "I hope you've learned something from all this, Marcus. Not just about me, but about yourself. About what really matters." The conversation ended shortly after that, leaving Marcus with a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Maya hadn't offered reconciliation, nor had she lashed out in anger. Instead, she had responded with the same grace and dignity she had always shown, a stark contrast to the chaos he had brought into her life. As he hung up the phone, Marcus realized that her response was more powerful than any accusation could have been. It forced him to sit with his guilt, to truly reflect on the consequences of his actions. Inspired by Maya's resilience, Marcus began making small changes in his own life. He started volunteering at a local shelter, using his business skills to help people get back on their feet. At first, it was just a way to occupy his time, to distract himself from his loneliness. But as he worked alongside others who were struggling, he found a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Helping someone write a resume, offering advice on budgeting, or simply listening to their stories reminded him of the value of connection and community, things he had taken for granted. During his pursuit of wealth and status, word of his efforts eventually spread, and some people began to soften their opinions of him. While he didn't regain everyone's trust, a few former colleagues and acquaintances reached out, cautiously welcoming him back into their circles. Marcus accepted their gestures humbly, knowing he didn't deserve their forgiveness, but grateful for the opportunity to rebuild some semblance of a support system. Still, redemption felt distant. Marcus knew he couldn't undo the harm he had caused, and he didn't expect anyone to forget it. But he also realized that he wasn't defined solely by his mistakes. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, gave him a glimmer of hope, a reminder that growth was possible, even after failure. As he lay in bed one night, staring at the ceiling, Marcus thought about Maya. She had moved on, thriving in ways he never imagined, while he was still trying to piece together the fragments of his shattered life. The gap between them seemed impossibly wide, but for the first time, Marcus felt a flicker of peace. He couldn't change the past, but he could choose how to move forward. And perhaps in time he could find a way to live with the weight of his choices, not as a burden, but as a lesson. Years had passed since Marcus made the choices that altered his life forever. Now sitting alone in a modest apartment far removed from the luxury of his penthouse days, he often found himself reflecting on the man he used to be. The walls of his new home were bare, except for a single photograph, a faded picture of him and Maya during happier times. It was a reminder not just of what he had lost, but also of who he had been before ambition and greed clouded his judgment. Marcus spent most of his days volunteering at the shelter where he first began rebuilding his life. He no longer saw it as a way to fill time. Instead, it became his purpose. Helping others gave him a sense of fulfillment that money and status never could. Whether it was teaching someone how to manage finances or simply sharing a meal with those less fortunate, Marcus discovered joy in small, meaningful acts. His efforts didn't erase his past mistakes, but they allowed him to contribute something positive to the world, a sharp contrast to the destruction he had once caused. Occasionally, he would hear about Maya through mutual acquaintances or news articles celebrating her achievements. She had become a prominent figure in their community, known not only for her professional success but also for her dedication to mentoring women facing adversity. Each mention of her name brought a mix of pride and sorrow. Pride because he had once been part of her journey, and sorrow because he had walked away from everything she represented: love, loyalty, and integrity. Friends sometimes asked if he regretted leaving Maya. Marcus always answered honestly, every day. But he didn't dwell on it as much as he used to. Instead, he focused on learning from his failures. He came to understand that true wealth wasn't measured by bank accounts or possessions. It was found in relationships, trust, and the ability to grow from hardship. Maya had taught him that lesson, even if he hadn't recognized it at the time. One afternoon, while sorting donations at the shelter, Marcus overheard two volunteers talking about an upcoming event honoring local leaders. One of them mentioned Maya's name, describing her as an inspiration to everyone who knows her. Hearing this, Marcus felt a pang of longing, but also gratitude. Though he couldn't undo the pain he had caused, he was thankful that Maya had risen above it all. Her resilience served as both a reminder of his shortcomings and a beacon of hope for anyone struggling to rebuild their lives. As the years went by, Marcus grew more content with his simpler existence. He still dreamed of reconnecting with Maya, someday, not out of selfishness or nostalgia, but to express his admiration for the person she had become. He knew she might never forgive him, and he didn't blame her. Forgiveness wasn't something he deserved. It was something he hoped to earn through continued growth and service. In quiet moments, Marcus thought about the lessons he had learned. He realized that happiness wasn't about chasing perfection or living up to society's expectations. It was about staying grounded, valuing people over possessions, and embracing imperfection. These truths seemed obvious now, but they had eluded him during his darkest days. Though Marcus would carry the scars of his decisions for the rest of his life, he chose to see them as reminders rather than burdens. They pushed him to be better, not for anyone else's approval, but for his own peace of mind. And while redemption remained a distant goal, he took comfort in knowing that every kind act, no matter how small, brought him one step closer to becoming the man he wished he had been all along. Life, Marcus learned, wasn't about avoiding mistakes. It was about learning from them. And though he couldn't rewrite his story, he hoped others might find value in his journey. After all, it was never too late to change direction as long as you were willing to face the consequences of your choices and strive to do better. For Marcus, that realization was enough.